Welcome to Standard Deviation.
Take your time.
Hello there, Sarah.
Hi, Kevin.
How's it going?
I'm doing all right. My arms are tired.
Is that because of all the push-ups you didn't do?
Fuck off. I did so many half push-ups this morning. I just got back into a workout regime literally today. Besides just running. I guess I run here and there, but this was like first like real workout, and it kicked my ass. I took a shower afterwards, and it was actually really hard to shampoo my hair because I had to keep my arms up for longer than 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's a good sign that you know what that reminded me of? You ever do that thing when you were a kid where like you stand in a doorway with your arms pushed against the door frame and then they like raise up on their own? That's weird. All right.
That's it?
That's all I got. I'm pretty tired today. I'm a little queasy. My stomach's been bothering me. I think it might be the Rona.
Oh, you got the Rona? How is that possible when we haven't left the house in 4 months?
Well, you know.
Okay.
It gets around, you know, mutates.
Uh-huh.
We have had a visitor.
Yeah.
And that's always dangerous. Anyway, P90X, yeah, so that's shit.
I didn't say P90X.
Yeah, you were doing P90X. That's what she was doing, everybody. I want to say this. There's a lot of people who can't do push-ups, and I was once one of those people. I think the first time I tried, it was in a PE class in I don't know, 9th grade or something. And I don't know if I tried before then, but I know in that class when we started doing push-ups, I could only do, I think, 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. I was also large. It's about 200 pounds at the time. Mm-hmm. So, and by the end of the class, I was doing, I think, about 20 or something. So it is one of those things that seems just really daunting and impossible. But, you know, you can definitely make a lot of progress with it if you try. I like to encourage people for push-ups. This is more for everybody else.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, like, it's just been a long time since I've, like, properly worked out like that. But I know I always build up to it.
Yeah. I'm trying to build up to 100 in a row in the next about month and a half.
I don't think I can ever do that.
I mean, you could, but you wouldn't want to. It's a lot of... My thing is, like, I want to pace it right because you can also end up with, like, repetitive strain injuries, carpal tunnel syndrome, that kind of shit if you overdo it too quickly, you know? So I don't want to reach my goal and then just like cripple myself for 2 months, you know? So I got to pace it. What are you laughing at?
I just had this memory. I had a goal for myself to do one of those headstands where you have like your head on the ground and then also like your forearms.
Yeah, those are hard.
I mean, as far as being upside down goes, it's probably the first one you learn. But I was like, I found this YouTube tutorial on how to do it, like step by step. And I was practicing it, and I thought I was getting pretty good. And then I was like, I wonder what it looks like. And I recorded myself doing it. My legs were not vertical.
Wow.
I had no idea. I thought they were vertical, and they were actually like at a 45-degree angle.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had that problem the first time I did. There's like an inverted version of that's a yoga posture where like it's the back of your neck and shoulders and arms up to the elbows on the ground.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Or that's what I was doing.
Oh.
That's what I meant.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
yeah, it's hard to tell even when you were looking at your feet, then you could see them.
No.
I think we're talking about different things.
Maybe.
I think mine was just like an inverted version of yours. It's a lot easier.
You start out like downward dog.
Yeah, no, this is like that upside down. So you start off laying down flat and raise your feet up. You
mean on your back?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, a lot easier. You still get a lot of the benefits in terms of like blood flow and that kind of thing from inverted postures, but without as much pressure and strain. Because the way you were doing it, it's also it can be pretty dangerous on your neck. You know, people.
Yeah. One of the things I was learning in the YouTube tutorial was how to avoid that. Because you're not supposed to put pressure on your neck. You're supposed to put all the pressure on your forearms.
Yeah, which is hard. Most people don't have like the shoulder strength. You know.
I don't have shoulder strength, and I didn't find it that hard.
Yeah, but you were doing it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, once I saw myself on video, I realized it, and then I started doing it. I started getting my legs up there, and then it was just a matter of balance. That was tricky.
How long could you do it?
I don't remember. It's a long time ago at this point.
Was it against a wall?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, welcome to Yoga Hour.
Yeah.
I like yoga. Yoga's fun. I need to start again.
Bad yoga with Kevin and Ciara.
Yeah. So my back's been bugging me because I'm an old. Because I work with poor posture when I'm sitting with my laptop,
Yeah, I think we both have that. We're both computer people. Yeah, you mentioned joining me with my P90X routine, which I bet if anyone remembers P90X, it was like popular in the early aughts, I'd say.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and I don't know, there were like tons of infomercials for it. It was just kind of this like trendy workout videos, and they're good. But anyways, once a week you do yoga. It's like the longest video. It's an hour and a half.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to make fun of me for not actually doing it like I said I was going to do.
Oh, I was going to say that it doesn't surprise me that you didn't join me today, and yeah. I suspect that
that'll continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty likely. Although I will say that as I was sitting in there trying to read and ignore your workout, which didn't work, I did find myself watching it and was interested. Because it has been a while since I had any kind of exercise routine.
It's been a while.
God, it's never going to stop.
Yeah, it's a good routine. I like it.
Yeah, and I am definitely. I mean, exercise. It's one of those things that like everybody knows you're supposed to do it, but it's what?
Nothing. It'd be funny if that was the end of that sentence.
Yeah. That's all. Thanks for listening. No, it just it's there are times when it's more obvious like how much I need it, Like every time I go to New York for a few months, like the first week is hell because like my feet and legs are so sore and cramped, and that that kind of stuff reminds me like it's just walking, like I should be able to walk a while before I collapse. The first time I went to New York, I was like just eating, I was like living on ibuprofen by the time I left. Because I had new Converse, which are pretty narrow shoes also.
And very flat.
Yeah, and very flat. And I have pretty wide feet. And I just like walked around for 3 days. Like probably 10 or 12 hours a day. And by the third day, I was just like holed up in my hotel. It was bad.
Yeah.
It's brutal. So I watched Iron Man.
Yeah, normally I work out pretty regularly, but that was in the before times. And for whatever reason, quarantine has just kind of zapped that motivation, which is weird because I would work out at home anyways. Like I just prefer that. Some people don't. Some people like have to go to a gym and that's just what works for them. And just working at home works for me, or at least it did. But
it could be something I learned about working remote, because I've been working remote for about a decade remotely. One of the things I learned about that is that when you're in the same environment for too long, it can feel like subconsciously oppressive, So it could be that. It just could be that you're home so much that nothing is novel about working out at home, like it's just like you're just in a prison cell.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does a little bit. It's just been hard, and I think this is like pretty relatable. I think everyone's just kind of depressed and drinking a lot more, and and I've just kind of gotten sick of it. We'll see if I stick to this. I think I will. Yeah. It was the beginning of a new month, and usually like beginning of the new month, I kind of get a motivation to change something. So yeah, I've been getting sick of drinking and feeling sorry for myself. So
yeah, I've been drinking more and not feeling sorry for myself. But, yeah, but I mean, the drinking more is taking a toll.
You have no sympathy for yourself.
I mean, some. I'm working on it. My therapist says that's important, so I don't know. I think she's an idiot, but no, just kidding.
He doesn't go to therapy.
No. I would like to, but no. One thing that I've been a little concerned to look into is like for me the only structured exercise that I enjoy enough to do, and even then I don't do it much, is jiu-jitsu. It's the only like sport that I care enough about to. I mean, if laser tag were a sport, that would be pretty
I don't
slick.
see why it's not.
Yeah, so I care about laser tag too. I've only done it once, but it was so much fun.
Kevin talks about laser tag all the time.
I mean, a fair amount, considering that I did it once 2 years ago.
You can't stop thinking about it.
I was good too. I feel like that's one of those things where like if you're good at something and it's fun, like it's just like has this net impact bigger than the sum of the parts, because if you're good at something that's not that fun, it doesn't really matter that much, and if something's fun and you're terrible at it, it's harder to stick with. But I was quite good at laser tag. Anyway, jiu-jitsu I'm worried about because of the pandemic, because it's a lot of very close contact.
Yeah.
There is no social distancing in jiu-jitsu. It's people grappling. For those who don't know, it's people wrapped up, tangled in each other's limbs. I mean, you already have high transmission rate of things like ringworm. Ringworm is pretty common. Staph infections are pretty common in jiu-jitsu. So you already get like a lot of risk of disease spread. But with something like this, like, I don't know how it's. I mean, like, if this becomes a regular thing, or if there's no vaccination, ever, or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how sports like that are gonna survive. I mean, it's probably not gonna become a regular thing. Like, given how rare pandemics are, hopefully this isn't like a sign that they're speeding up or something, since it's just the one. But
well, we might also get just really cheap and quick testing too.
yeah,
Which could hold us over till we have a vaccine.
Oh, that's a good point. That'd be good. You could, like, at a jiu-jitsu gym, you could just screen people.
Yeah, exactly. Or like anything, airplane or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just worried about jiu-jitsu.
I know, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and I haven't even done jiu-jitsu in like 2 years before the pandemic. I went to 10th Planet, Eddie Bravo's school, one of his schools here in Portland, and man, they fucked me up. Oh, they're brutal. They're so rough. Because one of the things that's different about Eddie Bravo's system is they do a lot of neck cranks. And
What's
like,
a neck crank?
It's like putting pressure on the neck as a submission, which is usually frowned on, and I think it should be frowned on.
Yeah.
In this climate?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Current events. Putting pressure on someone's neck.
Oh, because of the pandemic?
No, because of George Floyd, dumbass.
Oh, right. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that's, God, did we ever talk about positional asphyxia and all that, and compressive
I don't know
asphyxia?
if we did.
Anyway, yeah, that's a whole other thing. But, yeah, it was rough, the class. It was like, I think I was the most sore from that one since the very first time I went to jiu-jitsu. The very first class I had, I was limping for about a week. Like when you have a really good exercise and then you limp for like a day or two sometimes. I was limping for a solid week after that first one. Yeah, it was brutal. And then every time since then it's been like a little less brutal, aside from specific injuries like when I've broken things. But yeah, that was a whole different thing. And there's a lot of controversial stuff about Eddie Bravo's jiu-jitsu system, and I have to say, I think it's a cool system. I like it a lot, and I like the people a lot. They're weird. They're like the weird people in jiu-jitsu, But yeah, I think some of the techniques they use are a bit more dangerous than is generally recognized, or at least by them. And that's what I have to say about that.
Cool, man.
Yeah, I don't want to go on too much about jiu-jitsu because you don't care.
No, I don't.
Although I would like to get somebody on who's like a well-known jiu-jitsu expert. Maybe that Joe Rogan fella is not busy. We can see if he can make an appearance. We can
I was thinking of something
Eddie
more attainable, like Matt Thornton.
Yeah. Who's that? He's that local guy, right?
Yeah, he's local, and he knows a lot about I think he wrote a book on violence in general.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
I have books on violence. I wonder if I have one of his books. It's weird that I have books on violence, but what are you going to do, It's 2020.
That doesn't surprise me with you.
No. But yeah, I think it would be good to get some people on because, well, I mean, really, that would be kind of a specialist episode because most of you aren't going to care all that much about the details of ligament structure. But I have a lot to say about ligaments in jiu-jitsu.
Do I have to be in this episode?
I mean, no, you don't. That reminds me, I need to start my own podcast. So I do crazy shit like that. Let's have a jiu-jitsu series where we talk about ligaments for 6 months.
Oh, my God.
Anyway.
Speaking of violence, we are on day 60-something of the Portland protest/riots.
Yeah.
And the feds seemed to have left on Wednesday night was their last night. And boy, did they go out with a bang. Holy shit. I have this anarchist that I follow on Twitter, and she live tweets. She goes out every night and live tweets. And I just every night I go and I read her live tweets. They're very good. And, man, Wednesday, it was like reading or watching a cyberpunk movie unfold. 'Cause normally they were, okay, so for those who don't know, which I think a lot of people know, Portland's been kind of a hot spot of drama in the U.S. lately. We've had lots of protests. Portland is very uber liberal, very left wing, and they love to protest. Even before the George Floyd, there were always protests, mostly between Antifa and Proud Boys, that sort of thing. They would just kind of come out. Proud Boys would have a protest or a demonstration or whatever you want to call it, and Antifa would come out, and then they brawl, and then whatever, everyone would go home. And anyways, so when this happened, it was just this is, of course, it's a hot spot where people are going to get upset and protest a lot. And the courthouse downtown has been a target. If you go, it's absolutely covered in graffiti. And since it's a federal building, the federal agents are obligated to protect it. And our mayor, Ted Wheeler, who is quite possibly the most hated mayor ever, everyone hates him. The leftists hate him because they think he's a fascist. Center people hate him because he's not cracking down on these anarchists well enough. From my point of view, he has seemed, because he's also the Portland police commissioner, I should add that. So he controls the police. And when protests happen, and they often get rowdy and violent at times, the police, I think, take a pretty passive role. But I think any sort of pushback, the people that are protesting see it as violence. Anyways, so courthouse is tagged. It's being attacked every night. People are throwing flaming garbage at it. They've already broken into a police precinct and tried to burn it down. So I see no reason why they wouldn't want to do the same thing in the courthouse. I've heard speakers at the protests through live streams say, let's burn this down. So federal agents came out, built a fence, try to protect it.
So are these the same federal agents that Trump sent in?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of controversy in the beginning, and I only heard that they were there for the courthouse from you. But the initial coverage was all just Trump sent in these people from Border Control and Homeland Security. Mm-hmm. The mayor and the governor didn't want them there. Nobody knew why they were there. They were abducting people in unmarked cars.
Yeah, so there was a lot of that too. There's a few things going on. It's a little bit complicated. For the most part, they seem to be just in front of the courthouse on the other side of the fence, protecting it. But there were issues of them just grabbing people off the streets, not saying who they were. I mean, even though it's odd, they do have it says police on their uniform, but putting them in unmarked vehicles, taking them, they don't even know, questioning them, and then releasing them, and then
not even charging them or arresting them.
Yeah, exactly.
They're detaining them without arresting them.
Yeah.
Which seems like a civil rights issue.
Yeah, and so the citizens, there's no paperwork that they can, call upon or whatever. So in that case, seems to be what they're doing is, I was told that it's likely that there were agents maybe on rooftops or something witnessing crimes and then calling upon agents that were kind of on the outskirts being like, hey, look out for this guy. And then when that person was kind of wandering around, probably not doing anything at that time, that's when they would grab them and then identify him. And so they're keeping a database of people that way. That's what I've heard. I don't know if for sure that's what they're doing, but it kind of makes sense. Anyways, so there's that, which seems pretty sketchy. And then they've been protecting the federal building, which in and of itself, okay, that makes sense too. But objectively speaking, these protests have got increasingly worse when the feds came. They just it was they threw gasoline on the situation, and what was started out, or what was before, was kind of this dwindling protest. There were still maybe 50 to 100 people coming out, but once the feds came and started just tear gassing people, then it expanded to thousands, and people just got more rowdy and all that. So I think they kind of realized all right, this isn't working. And so they left, and now it's still, the crowd is still pretty swollen. I think people are still very motivated. I think the people that are there are reminding people hey, this protest isn't just about getting the feds to leave. We still have another cause, which is, well, some people want to defund the police. Some people want to abolish it. Some people just want to tear it down, and I don't know what happens after that. Utopia, I guess.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
Why didn't we think of that before?
Yeah.
We just get rid of the police. All the crime will stop.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I don't know. I was watching like 5 different live streams, and it just seemed like a protest. Like it didn't seem, I don't know, people giving speeches and marching around and chanting, and it seemed much more peaceful because, you know, I think I saw pictures of like people like seeing police like lingering like in unmarked cars, like watching, or like on rooftops. Like every once in a while they notice a cop on a rooftop and they yell at him to jump. But yeah, I mean, you can tell it's much more peaceful than when the police are tear gassing him. And
yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, this
is an interesting situation. So all these protests started over George Floyd's death, and I have this hypothesis, I guess you could say, an interpretation that I think they were amplified in intensity and in duration by the pandemic and the economic effects of the pandemic. Because, I mean, you got a lot of people super poor. I think on the last episode we mentioned that I heard that in July, 37% of Americans missed their mortgage payments. And that's just July. So, like, this is August 2nd today, 2020. So, like, the pandemic started around February. And we're, like, just seeing some of the major impacts economically.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are not able to get unemployment compensation. I think most states' unemployment departments are entirely dysfunctional at the moment because they're just overwhelmed because everybody was laid off because of the pandemic. I saw a headline yesterday that a third of restaurants will permanently close this year.
Oh gosh, there's so many like Portland staples here that like one after another they're just dropping like flies. It's really sad.
Yeah. This article was about Katz Deli in New York and how it's staying open. And I didn't read the article, so I don't know how it's staying open. But it occurred to me that there's a lot of really iconic restaurants around the world, really, that are gone.
Yeah.
And it's funny to think, like, you know, it's not just that they're shutting down for a while. A lot of them are just done because, you know, restaurants run on pretty small margins. And restaurant owners, for the most part, don't have a lot of savings. So, like, if their business is shut down for like a month, I mean, probably less than that, then they're bankrupt.
Yeah, I think the only way like a restaurant could survive is if the person they're leasing from is like, well, I don't think anyone else is going to be able to lease this building anyways, so I might as well let them stay. I don't know. Yeah. But you're right. Like, so people are poor, they're struggling, and then also I think they're bored. Like, someone made the point that it's. I think these protests, and not for everyone. I think a lot of people are very passionate about what's going on and really believe that there needs to be change. I think a lot of people, it's replacing clubs and bars for them. Yeah. Like I was watching a live stream the other day, and someone made the comment that it was mostly kids out there, like teenagers, like 14, 15-year-old kids. And hell, I want to go out there and check it out. If there weren't a pandemic, I totally would. Yeah. Because it's you know, it's historic. Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing else to do.
Yeah. I also, I was hesitant. Every time I say that, I'm hesitant to phrase it right because, like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm taking away from the validity of the protests. Some of them are not valid. I mean, you know, to be frank, but that's mostly a matter of things like violence and destroying local businesses and stuff like that's. It's hard to justify that regardless of what your cause is. But it just really, it seems like the pandemic is kind of like the fuel. It's like the catalyst for what would be probably a relatively contained protest to just keep burning. And it also is it's not just the direct effect. It's also symbolically important because, I mean, the way that this country has handled this pandemic is something to protest in itself. I mean... Yeah.
Well, there were those protests, but those protests weren't okay.
Right.
Well, sort of. It was the, people that wanted to reopen the economy, which I think is a worthy thing to protest. Unfortunately, those were also people that think wearing a mask is infringing on their rights. So it's not a good look. Just like the rioters aren't a good look for these protests. Yeah,
and I'm sure in both cases there's people who were doing it right. Like I'm sure there's people protesting the economic shutdown who were being responsible about masks and whatnot. And the other thing is like I don't know if we've talked about it, but there was a tendency to oversimplify and dismiss the things that people were protesting when they were protesting the economy being shuttered. Because, yeah, some of it was stupid stuff, like, oh, I want a haircut. Sure.
Yeah.
But it's also a lot of stuff like I heard around the time that those protests were going on that 9% of unemployment claims in Florida had been paid. 9%. And this is during record unemployment. So that means that Florida, which is already not the richest state in the world, was really struggling financially. I mean, they were destitute, and people were like really trying to get out there and, you know, pay their bills and buy food, and couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, like, if the government's going to shut businesses down, issue stay-at-home orders, and then not pay unemployment claims, I think, yeah, sure, protest that.
Yeah, of course people are going to push back.
Yeah. It's a no-win situation. As much as I despise Trump, I got to say, this is just it's a shit situation either way. Like, whatever you do, it's bad. I mean, we're already at 150,000 Americans dead from the pandemic, and we're still in the first wave, too. There's a lot of misconception from people.
We have like a wave going over our first wave.
Yeah. So there was a lot of misconceptions from people that we were in the second wave. But what happened is we shut down the economy, and then everybody's like, well, this isn't going to work, guys. You know, like, this isn't a country anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody's poor. Businesses are closed. Granted, maybe less people have a pandemic or have this disease, but like, it's not going to work. So we started opening shit back up again. Florida just was like, fuck it, let's do it. You know, I don't know what their deal was. Well, I mean, it was probably what I just described. But, you know, then when that happened, the pandemic immediately spiked again. It skyrocketed, the new cases and deaths. And so they're like, oh, shit, we got to close things down again. And anyway, so that created an illusion that it was a second wave. But it wasn't the second wave. It was a flux of the first wave that had been tampered a little bit by shutting up the businesses. I don't really know how second waves work, but apparently they're pretty common for pandemics. I don't know why. It's kind of weird to me that there would be. But we still have that to look forward to in the fall, I hear.
Yeah. Yeah, and people are sick of being inside. Like, not to name any names, but like my friends of mine who were judging other friends of mine for getting on a plane too early, in their opinion, are now talking about going on a plane somewhere. And it's like, things are worse than ever. Like,
yeah, and the other thing is, like, there was also this weird illusion that the pandemic wasn't getting as bad as it is getting because red states are very spread out. Mostly conservative, Republican, mostly states are less dense. There's less population. So you think New York was the first hit. Right. Obviously. New York is the most international city.
Totally.
And
people
it's the most
stacked
dense.
on each other.
Yeah, there's like 8 million people in that tiny little area. But anyway, that created this other illusion that, like, oh, everybody's fine. But, we're, like, it takes a while. It takes a while to get out in the boonies or even, you know, here. Like, we had our most cases yet in Portland, like 3 weeks ago, I think. And I haven't checked again since then. So, yeah, it's, people are now starting to know people who have it or get it themselves. I've had family members that got it already. So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is really we should be more concerned now. Like, every day, it's like an Office Space. Every day is the worst day of my life, you know, because it's like just as bad as it was, but now there's another day, so it's just worse. That's how the pandemic is right now, because until it starts to contract, every day the risk is greater. And that may not be true in every location. Like, I don't know if New York is now safer because it spread so much so quickly or not. Because, I mean, I still have friends who are pretty much shut in, and that's probably why they haven't gotten it yet. So, like, it's probably not safer.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of confused about the concept of herd immunity. But I would think that maybe New York has reached that, and that's why it's maybe safer. I don't know. But the thing is, they also have a lot of transit people. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. There's a lot we
don't know about this.
I mean, like, I remember reading years ago that during an average workday in New York, a weekday rather, I think 35 million people passed through Manhattan to commute. Wow. So that's partly people who live in New York and partly people from, like, Jersey and other places. 35 million people a day just passing through New York subways. That's crazy. Yeah. But yeah, so when everything shut down and then reopened and then shut down like right away, that's when I became a little more concerned at that point, because I'm like, oh God, like, nobody knows what they're doing. Yeah. Like, part of me wants to think, like, given the benefit of the doubt, maybe that was intentional. Like they're testing the waters, kind of open, close, instead of just sticking with one or the other to see how it goes. I like to think that, but I think it's more like there's just no good solution. We don't have the welfare infrastructure that we need to take care of people during crisis. This is America, after all.
Yes.
God, it's so fucked up that we're that backwards.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about the psychology of it, because it's this whole rugged individualism thing. It's like, we're Americans. This is like the Wild West mentality, which was partly rugged individualism and also partly shitting on people who are in your way. And those tend to go hand in hand a bit. And it's just a shame.
Yeah.
If we're going to compete globally, and that's the thing, is I am still pro competition. I like it when America's doing well, for the most part. But I don't necessarily think it's like the best country to be leading, given our performance in the last few years, doing things like electing Donald Trump. Yeah. It's hard to say that this is still the country that should be in charge. I mean, was it ever? Honestly.
It's I gotta say, the past few months, this might seem kind of odd, have changed me in two ways. One is I totally understand the Second Amendment now in a way that I didn't before.
Yeah.
And two, I feel like I'm actually more patriotic than I've ever been.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How so?
I guess when I'm seeing like all these problems that we have, and I see people recognizing them and trying to push back and trying to do something, like I think that's what America is about, is like recognizing the problems and protesting and working towards a better country. And also and that makes us a good country, and there's lots of things that make us a great country. And so
that's a good point.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, and also, I've traveled to a lot of places. Like, I know what some of the alternatives are.
Yeah.
So, we have our problems, but I think ultimately it is a really good country. And, I kind of, I don't really like it when people are just like, I'm going to move to Canada. I mean, fine, you can move to Canada. Canada's a great country. Probably better than us. Fine. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I guess just all this kind of pressure and these problems that are arising has kind of ironically made me love the country even more and just like want it to do better and believe that it can do better.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think you put it well. Yeah, that is a lot of what America is about. And I wouldn't say that I've become more patriotic, but I would say that I have become more interested in getting involved in the system. And I don't know if I will. It's really just kind of like a background theme in my mind lately. But there was that one project that I can't go into too much detail about, but the project having to do with monitoring of critical infrastructure systems that I was, for a while, without getting into all the details, it's a project I was working on. And I was hoping that it could go as far as influencing legislation and international standards for data science, and that's all stuff that would have been cool, as a goal anyway. But it felt more like I have to do that. Like this is an obligation now, and in that way, it's kind of like, I guess I'm just glad that I had that instinct to try to help things, because a lot of people are pretty nihilistic, and or just counterproductive. They just want to tear things down. Yeah, and sometimes cool, I get it, but also you got to live here, so yeah, maybe don't tear it all down.
Well, the problem I think with people talking about tearing it down is they don't. It's like, well, what are you building after that? Right. I don't really hear people talk about a concrete plan that makes sense of what will be built after that. And I think people take for granted how much has been built already and how much really does work here and works very well. I mean, there's a story of like Ayaan Hirsi Ali, born in Somalia, lived in that country for most of her life, and then was getting was escaping an arranged marriage, went to Europe, I think first in Germany and then the Netherlands. And some of the best chapters in her memoir, Infidel, I think it's called, is her like discovering or like seeing what it's like to live in such a different country than Somalia. And it was like really simple things. Like she had to go take the tram somewhere and there was this like electronic sign that said it was coming in 5 minutes, and she's like, yeah, right. And then 5 minutes went by and the tram came, and that was just amazing. Like, just extraordinary. And it may sound so simple, but it's not. That actually is extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Time is a good illustration of differences in countries. Countries have very bizarre relationships to time.
Mm-hmm. And then even beyond that, like, she was of this belief that if a woman went out not wearing a hijab, like, men would just lose control and rape you, and you deserved it. And like, so she's watching all these, Dutch women walking around just talking to men, and she was just amazed that they were just talking to each other like people, and
Wow.
It was fine. So, I mean, there's so many things I think we take for granted, and that's not to say that, again, we don't have problems that need to be solved, but I don't know, I think everything needs to be put in perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And, I hear that's where the term conservative comes from in terms of politics, is conservatives want to conserve certain things. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's even true etymologically, but that is, when I learned that, is around the time I started giving conservatives more credit. And really that was because I started giving liberals less credit, because we started making fools of ourselves on a grand scale around 2015, 2016, that era. Or at least I became more aware of it, and it became more acute. Mm-hmm. And, to a large extent led to Trump's election. But anyway, yeah, I think there is a lot to that. It's I think as young people, myself included, it's easy to see all the problems and be angry and motivated to destroy the systems. But it's harder. It takes experience to see the nuance, mm-hmm. and how some of the stuff should really be held on to desperately.
Yeah.
And conserved at all cost.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize how often things get torn down and replaced with something much worse.
Yeah.
Like the Iranian Revolution, like before that, women could walk around in miniskirts and have their hair in the wind, and it was fine. And then they have this religious revolution, and I mean, now we know how the women live there.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't better.
Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot with revolutions in particular. The French Revolution is a great example of it, where, I mean, I don't know exactly what it is, and I haven't studied it enough to know even like how often a revolution turns evil, but I know it's common enough that it's a clear pattern in history that the revolutionaries who ostensibly were on the right side in the beginning, once they're in power, often are much worse than the people who they overthrew. And it's hard to see that coming, of course, but it happens, and that's true even if on a micro scale. It doesn't have to be a full scale revolution, but if you just overthrow systems, even small systems, smallish systems within a bigger system, the same thing can happen. You can definitely fuck yourself,
Yeah.
because these things evolve organically, and to replace them full stop or to attempt to, it's just, that's never going to work as well as you want it to.
Right.
At best, you might succeed.
Yeah, I mean, there's revolutions that want to burn down the courthouse. They want to burn down the court system.
Right.
I do not believe for 1 second they have a better replacement for courts.
I don't think they've thought this through. That's the thing, is that a lot of the things people talk about getting rid of, it's like we didn't always have this. Like, we had people died for this. Like,
right.
The court system, it's got plenty of problems.
Yeah.
But you don't want to get rid of the court system. It's the system of public accountability. Mm-hmm. I mean, without that,
it's just witch hunts.
Yeah, you literally just have public lynchings, mm-hmm. and that's the most civil you can get, in the sense that at least it's community. Yeah,
you get accusations and angry mobs and
right. Yeah.
Anyways,
it's yeah. I mean, it's like people trying to want to get rid of the government. It's like we started without government, right? It was worse. It took a long time to get a government system, any government system, working. And on the other hand, even setting that argument aside, you cannot function without government. And when I say that, I don't mean it'll be dysfunctional. I mean, it's literally impossible, because what would happen without a government is that you would form a government. You might call it something else. It might be informal, mm-hmm. but if people live together, they will arrange hierarchies, and they will appoint people or elect people or seize power and then appoint underlings, whatever. There's going to be a representative system of some kind.
Yep.
And that's just the way the world works. So the best thing you can do is try to get involved in that system and vote
Yeah.
and change the system, but getting rid of it's just stupid.
I saw a really good article on riot ribs in Portland that illustrated this like perfectly. It was like this case study on riot ribs. So riot ribs, this kind of came up in Portland with the protests and whatnot, and it was just a couple guys that wanted to feed the protesters, and so they brought out some grills and started feeding people, and they do it throughout the day. I actually went during the day to kind of check out the courthouse when, you know, obviously there's less people, and riot ribs was still out there. They were feeding homeless people. Great. I have no problem with that. That's nice, you know? Mm-hmm. And they wanted to have basically like a Marxist system where there were no leaders. They shared everything. I think they were taking donations, and they got up to something like 300,000 donations.
Wow. Like $300,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, yeah, $300,000 in donations. And what happened exactly? Okay, so I think at one point they were like, we're going to stop taking donations. This is a lot of money. We're not doing this for the money. And then there was like a disagreement on how the money should be used. Like some people thought it should just be spread to everyone that was involved. Some people thought that I think some of the owners were like, well, we want to buy a couple vans, you know? And there was just this disagreement with that. And then this other guy that was one of the volunteers working with them got mad that they weren't representing the people. And so he started his own Cash App and was taking donations, or he was also mad that they weren't taking donations. So he made his own Cash App.
Riot Ribs 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, Bizarro Riot Ribs. And he started taking donations, which of course pissed people off because then it seemed like he was, you know, acting in his own self-interest. And then he started arming himself and coming in and basically intimidated the other two guys out. And
With like guns or?
I think so. Yeah. And so he ran the other two guys out. The Riot Ribs like made a statement being like, hey, we're leaving. You know, things have gotten scary and we're going to regroup. Like, we don't want to abandon everyone, but this isn't a good situation right now. And so they left, and then everyone's like, well, what the hell are you doing with the money? And so a couple days later, they were like, look, we're not trying to take the money. We're going to be as transparent as we can. And so we're going to tell you on Twitter here where the money's going. And they showed screenshots of them giving money to various other kind of volunteer groups. Really funny groups, by the way, name-wise. So there was the witches. So there's a group of witches that were giving out like medical supplies and putting hexes on fascists. There was Meals for Heels, which was a group of strippers that were something to do with food.
Feeding strippers. I mean, strippers got to eat too. You know?
Yeah, strippers got to eat. There was like the raccoon posse or something, and they were very cute. They basically, you know, because raccoons are trash animals, they cleaned up after the protests and the riots. Oh. You know, I just love the names. It's very Portland. It's very quirky. So anyways, they were just kind of passing out the money that way. And then they were saying like, look, if there are people there giving out ribs, that's not us, just so you know. And so it just made things very weird. But it just speaks to that, like how quickly that concept falls apart. And if someone comes in with guns, like they're gonna take over.
Yeah,
it's just like in Chaz, the fucking warlord just came in after a week.
Yeah, I think 2 people died in Chaz, right?
Yeah,
like Seattle Autonomous,
and I think even more shootings happened there. Like it just fell apart very quickly.
You think?
So one of the things that so this is something I struggle with because, okay, you got a group of people, mostly peaceful protesters. I believe most people just want to protest peacefully, but there is a small and powerful, I think, group of people that want to fucking destroy shit. They were literally shining these green lasers into the eyes of federal agents. These lasers were banned from Burning Man because they blind people.
Yeah.
And they were shining it in their eyes, and apparently there were a couple federal agents who are blind now. I don't know if they're going to recover. Last I read that they couldn't fucking see. And they're throwing, you know, most people at protests would be like, oh, they're just firecrackers. Firecrackers are explosives. You can fucking blow a limb off. So they're throwing firecrackers at them. They're throwing flaming garbage. They're doing all this shit. And so, you know, I think force does have to be met with force.
Yeah.
But what they were doing obviously wasn't working because it was just making things worse. So the federal agents come in, they tear gas him, all this stuff. The crowd just swells. It just makes things a lot worse. So what do? You can't just leave. You can't just you can't have no police because then you're going to have another Chaz or Chop or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And we all know how well that turned out. So I understand people are mad and I'm frustrated. But I wish people would acknowledge, there's no clear answers here.
Right.
What are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I've been wondering, too, are there effective ways of controlling a crowd? Are they just bad at it? Or do we just not really know how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation, and it kind of went in circles because I think we're talking about kind of somewhat different things. But it's a good question. And to me, the answer is that it's sort of it's time-bounded. Mm-hmm. So, you can disperse a crowd. There's lots of ways to do it, and they disperse crowds all the time. But then if a bigger crowd comes back the next day, that's not crowd control issues. Right. That's society issues. That's civilization is crumbling. That's the kind of thing we ostensibly elect political leaders to handle. Lead the people, inspire people, create change, listen to the people, make things happen, and then hopefully they don't burn down the courthouse. But
Yeah, I think you're right. I would love. I wish Obama was president. Yeah. I know he has his problems too, but you can't.
God, one thing so much better.
Well, yeah, oh yeah. And one thing you can't. I don't think anyone could speak bad about him is that man could fucking give a speech. Yeah, so inspiring. Every speech he ever did, just gave me chills.
I have heard people talk shit about it. Speechwriters wrote it, and if his teleprompter wasn't there, he would fail. But that's not true. He also speaks off the cuff. Yes, yes, they do. And he also. It's not like he's never written his own speech. It's not like he's never had a public conversation that wasn't scripted. I mean, the man's an eloquent speaker.
Yeah, and that is a skill too. Is speaking. Yeah. George Bush could say the same words and it wouldn't come out as well.
Yeah. Most of the same words. No offense, W.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think because I was watching these speeches that were going on last night, and it was, I'm sorry, but it was a lot of people just screeching into a megaphone. Yeah. And it was just it was. I found it very just gyrating, and I kind of felt sad for a lot of these people because they're obviously it's coming from a place of pain, but also it's just there was nothing inspiring about him. It was mostly just it just made you feel bad, and so if you could find someone that was a real good speaker and just said something really inspirational that got the crowd to speak differently or think differently, then I think that would make a big difference.
So this reminds me about something I discovered when I was studying critical infrastructure systems. I discovered a lot of interesting stuff, but one of them was there's these things, what are they called? Something like community resilience committees or something. And they're these groups of people, they're like community leaders, community organizers, which I think is what Obama did for a large portion of his career. I think they exist to rally communities and organize things and handle this kind of shit. So I'd love to know what they have to say about this. Are they out there, or are there just too few of them, or maybe they're the ones giving horrible speeches? I don't know, but that'd be something to look into.
Yeah.
I'd be really curious about that. That would be something I might actually get involved in eventually is, on a local level, how does one lead a community unofficially,
Yeah.
I don't think I want to run for office, though. That's a whole different... God.
I think you have too many skeletons in the closet anyways.
Since I was a kid, I was thinking if I ever do run for office, I'm going to, day one, hand out dossiers on all my skeletons.
Well, don't they have politicians do that? People that help with their campaigns, aren't they hey, tell me everything?
Yeah, but I mean to the press, publicly, giving my opponents, just everybody, here's all the shit, arrested twice, overdosed on drugs once, said, just listen to the podcast if you want dirt on me. You know, I take shit out of context, do your thing, whatever. Yeah. There's plenty.
That is one inspiring thing about Trump is hey, maybe it doesn't matter if you have a bunch of skeletons in your closet.
That's what I've been saying is that the only good thing, and I'm not even certain it's a good thing, but the only good thing about Trump being elected is it shows that I wouldn't say he's an outsider per se, but you can definitely resist the standards of the system and still lead the system. You can, lead is maybe appropriate in scare quotes, but you can still head the system, disregarding any respect for norms or his own reputation. The guy's just, Anyway, so in a way that could be a good thing because it could signal that maybe you don't have to only present this bullshit polished facade in order to succeed in politics. But if it means, on the other hand, anybody can succeed in politics just by using divisive language and populist rallying techniques, then it's actually not a good thing. So I don't know. It's kind of a gray area.
Yeah. Do you want to do a Am I the Asshole real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I've had this one for a while, and it just we haven't really had enough time to do it. Hold on, I have to put my password in.
Cool. So for those who don't know, Am I the Asshole is a subreddit on the internet where people go and present a scenario where they had a disagreement with somebody, and then they ask the crowd to
we judge whether they're an asshole or not.
Who's the asshole? Yeah.
Okay. So the title of this is Am I the Asshole for Cleaning Poop Off My Female Friend?
No, come on.
This is actually a pretty interesting one.
Unless he pooped on her, then. Yeah.
All right. I am a 30-year-old married man. We recently had a party at our place for some close friends after COVID. 7 of us total. By different circumstances, we don't have much family, and we decided it would be our bubble of people that we would go through COVID times with. 4 women and 3 guys. Long story short, we drank quite a bit, and everyone was planning on crashing at our place. No big deal, nothing unusual. The one girl there that recently became single drank a lot, probably due to the breakup, and passed out on the floor. I moved her on the couch near us so we could continue talking while monitoring her. Didn't want her to choke on her puke or something. Well, eventually she stirs, rolls over, and reveals that she has pooped herself down her skirt and down her legs. Also on my couch, but it was a shitty couch. Now it's a really shitty couch.
Good choice there.
Everyone laughs at first and then starts gagging. The couple's basically...
Then everybody spontaneously shits themselves. And then everybody throws up.
The couples basically say it's a sign that the night is over and they start going to their rooms. Well, I'm the lone holdout that we can't just leave her there covered in poop. My wife was too drunk to help out and went to bed. I was conflicted because this was a close friend, so I did what I thought was best. I grabbed baby wipes and cleaned her up. To be clear, I did not touch her vagina at all. I did clean the poop off her butt and just quickly ran a wipe down her butt crack. I'm a nurse, so I have a super strong gag reflex. I slept on the couch next to her just in case I heard her choking. The next morning, everyone wakes up and comes to see their friend covered in poop. Well, she's not anymore, and that's when it starts. I can't believe you did that. That's assault. You basically groped her. These are all in quotes. My wife was no help, which hurt badly, and implied that I should have gotten her to do it, despite the fact that she was way too drunk to help. I feel like my friends aren't messaging me as much anymore, and I'm feeling excluded. Today was the final straw when I looked at my wife's phone and saw a group chat of the girls, and one of my best friends suggested the passed out girl file a police report. I don't know what to do. I'm so frustrated because I tried to do the right thing. I'm a goddamn nurse. Cleaning poop off someone is so clinical and practice, it's almost a routine at this point. Am I the asshole? And then there's some other things. First of all, I said a TLDR, but we did read it. Edit, everyone is asking. Not the same couch, same room, different couch. Sorry, that was vague. The girl who had the accident was horribly embarrassed the next day and left shortly after. I didn't harp on it because I was trying not to embarrass her, even as everyone was calling me out. I apologized the day of, which in hindsight kind of made me look guilty of something.
So he hasn't said clearly what she thinks of the situation. She was embarrassed, of course, but it didn't sound like she was levying accusations. But if people are telling her to file a police report, that would indicate that she's unhappy about it. Okay,
so I think there's a follow-up on that. What did the person who made the dookie in her pants say about the situation? You're only an asshole if she believes you assaulted her. If not, then you literally were just helping a friend so they wouldn't have to sleep in their own shit all night. And so he responded, she didn't say anything the day of, but she seems conflicted in the messages. She's almost seeming receptive of filing a police report.
Yeah.
And then someone asked, do you find her attractive? Interesting. And he said, my wife is insanely more attractive. That's the right answer. She's pretty, but nothing I would risk my wife over. Edit, I responded to this without thinking. Yes, she's pretty, but if she was a horrible ogre of a woman, I still would have done the same thing. Same as if it was a guy, friend, or anyone. I hate to sound like a mindless drone, but I have so much training for things like this. It's almost autopilot. I don't really know how to articulate it better.
So, yeah, those kinds of follow-up questions would be hard to answer because, like, there's so many ways to interpret anything he could answer to that. I'm just thinking if I was in that position, I would just say yes or no and let people speculate wildly about what that means. But anyway, well, this is a shit situation, so to speak. So it was like 6 people, was it?
7.
7. And how many women?
I think you said 4 women, 3 guys.
Okay, so before I judge this guy, I think that it's shocking that nobody could agree that at least the women could help clean up this woman.
Yeah.
Like that is what would have happened if this was my party, Like, I don't think I would even have to tell my friends that, but if there was a disagreement about what to do, that would be the resolution.
Yeah. He said his wife couldn't help. Like,
yeah.
She was too drunk.
Yeah. And then was everybody just like walking into walls drunk? I mean, if people are shitting themselves, then maybe they were. I mean, maybe literally he was the only person sober enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, okay. I don't think he's the asshole here. I think that the friends who didn't help, unless they were literally too drunk to help at the time, mostly the women, are certainly assholes. And I think their reaction, unless he's leaving something out, their reaction seems a little excessive.
Yeah. It sounds like they're trying to convince her that it was an assault when maybe she would have just been embarrassed and that would have been it.
Yeah. Yeah, like if it was just like him and his wife and this girl and that happened, like it probably just would have been like, oh, that's embarrassing. And then they probably just would never talk about it again. Right. But I mean, I can't speak for her, obviously, but it doesn't sound like she felt like she had been assaulted. But yeah, I mean, I don't. It's hard to imagine what I would actually do in that situation. 'Cause that's what I try to do with these is I put myself in situations. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like if there, God, so let's just erase the other people. If there's like nobody else there, then God, I'd have to really think about that.
It's a tricky one, huh?
Yeah. What do you think?
I don't think he's an asshole. I am sympathetic if the woman does feel violated.
Yeah.
And I guess that's it. Like, I mean, that's all there is to it. I'm not really sure, like, where else to go from there. Because, like, if I believe everything he's saying and I don't have any necessarily reason not to believe, like, nothing sounds unbelievable, I could totally see someone that's a nurse just, be like, all right, I've done this a million times before. He's just trying to do something nice. I doubt he got, like, a boner out of it.
Probably not. I think it's fair to give him a pass on that unless we have evidence otherwise. But yeah, especially as a nurse, I would think it would be an easier decision to make. I feel like if I was a nurse, then I would probably would not have to think so much about it. Yeah, considering like you do that every day at your job. Granted, it's there's consent issues because well, I mean, I guess the same issues apply because when you're doing it as a nurse, they're not always conscious or sober. Mm-hmm. Like if you work in an ER, you're constantly mopping shit off drunk people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think his friends might be a bit of assholes just to jump to the whole, like, that's assault, like, what you did was horrible. Because I could totally see someone being embarrassed and maybe it feels a bit less embarrassing if you could just put all the blame on this person that did this evil thing. Then you might feel less embarrassed that way because it's like, oh, he did a bad thing rather than I shit myself and that's embarrassing. Yeah.
I feel like if it just seems like that girl, like, she should also be like, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, maybe that's fucked up, but you guys just all went to bed? Like, your plan was to leave me covered in shit and then come laugh at me in the morning. Like, that's... Okay. All right. So, this is assholes all around.
It's assholes all the way down.
Yeah. Oh, man, what a weird... So I just got to ask you, if you and I are ever partying and you pass out and shit yourself, what do you want me to do?
You can clean me up. I'm all right with that.
All right. Well, I'm not going to. That's gross. Because, I mean, the other thing
you can get our nurse friend to do it. Sean can do it.
Right. There we go.
That's fine.
So the other thing to consider is that, like, there's health ramifications of leaving somebody covered in shit. They can develop a rash.
UTI.
Yeah, UTI. Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that on account of having a penis. But, yeah, that'd be a major risk. In fact, it gets worse than that. You could... I actually know somebody who had a hysterectomy from having anal sex followed by vaginal sex. without protection.
God.
And she got an infection from ass germs and had her entire reproductive system removed, or almost entire. Yeah.
That's
so
terrible.
I mean, and that could happen to this girl just from sleeping in shit. You know?
I feel like that's a little unlikely because you got to get it up there.
Yeah, fair enough. But anyway, there are health implications to not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, I remember one time I was at a party as a teenager, and a female friend of mine got so hammered that I think she peed her pants. She like fell down, tore her pants open, scraped her knee, was bleeding everywhere. And I think she also peed on herself. Mm-hmm. And we were like, what do we do? Fortunately, there were a lot of women around, so it wasn't like a bunch of guys trying not to help, you know?
Right.
So we just like kind of balanced her and changed her pants and put her into bed. But even that was just like, ugh. Like, it was really uncomfortable, you know? But anyway, that was fine. She was just glad we took care of her.
That's good.
Yeah. But like, this is a whole nother level.
Okay, so I don't think he's the asshole. But then there's a question of like, okay, if this woman does just feel very violated in this situation, should she file a police report? And in that case, I want to say no, because I think like, what's the point of a police report? You're trying to hold a bad person accountable for something. But I think in this case, like, his intention matters. Like, he might have made a mistake.
Sure.
You know, if she really feels violated and would have preferred her, you know, him not touching her in any way, then, you know, he should take responsibility for that and apologize. But I think she should also recognize his intent, which was just to help her. It wasn't, you know, he wasn't trying to assault her.
Yeah, if she has no reason to think that this was like some kind of deliberate mischief, then just tell him.
Yeah, he doesn't
Don't do that again. And
you know, he doesn't need to be put in jail or anything like that, because that's the point of jail, is to protect good people from bad people.
Right.
You know, and
I mean,
it doesn't seem like he's a bad person.
And as a nurse, I don't know how sex crimes go, but like I would imagine he could lose his license over something like that.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
probably.
That could end his career, and jail's not so great.
Yeah.
So yeah, this guy's not the asshole. Man, every time we do these, I want to like follow up. I want to like trace him and see what happens. You know, like, is there a story? You know, what was the development?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happened with that.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. And send us listener questions. Are people still sending us questions?
Yeah.
I don't check it often enough.
Yeah. We
you just ignore them? I guess I ignore them, too.
Yeah, they're there.
Cool. Well, keep sending them, because we used to answer them. We probably will. Mm-hmm. Or if nothing else, then when the universe stops expanding and starts contracting and time reverses, then we will again.
Yeah. Well, so. I feel like I have a hard time sometimes with listener questions because, okay, the reason I like I'm the asshole is because anyone could have an opinion on it. Anyone can answer it. Yeah. And sometimes we get some questions that are almost too good that I'm just like, I don't know. Yeah. That's my answer. I don't know. You're much more better at just fucking going off on anything.
I like wildly speculating. I don't know if you're just being responsible or something, but just be creative. Just, or you could tweak a question. Like, just, if you can't answer it at all, then just change it slightly. And
that's true.
Piss people off,
Oh, all right.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And send us questions at standardpodcast.com.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.